Everybody, this is the Cursed Creation show with the Cursed Creator. And
ADOS!
woohoo! So,
A wonderful start to what is going to be a very, very strange show.
you're dang right. So, let me just make sure I have everything we have here. So,
Yeah.
we are a duo who, we hang out, dude. That's about it. But on a serious note, this whole channel on Twitch and on YouTube will be dedicated towards films, games. You can continue there.
Yes, so this channel, this series specifically, is going to be mostly about the history of media. So that's going to include tabletop games, which is one of our big passions. We'll talk about that in a minute. Television, film, video games, comic books, basically anything, at least for me, that isn't literature. I know you've showed a little bit of interest, Scyther, in literature.
Yes.
Um, I frankly can't be bothered. Uh,
To for people that might get a bit confused as why it's calling me Cypher, that is also another name I go by. So if you guys want to call me that in chat, you can. So for literature, I particularly want to explore the greatness that is the pulps. Also through comics as well. The some of them can get very weird and very strange and also kind of shitty. It's how you expect that stuff. Um,
especially early on, early pulps. I've looked a little bit into it since you showed some interest, and we are in for some pain.
oh boy.
Um,
Oh, you can go.
oh yeah, no, I was just going to say that to kind of explain where we're coming from on this and why we're doing this in the first place. Me and Scyther have been friends for years, many years. I think it's like eight something now,
Just
right?
about. Yep. Eight.
Uh, um, And up until recently, I never really had an interest in media or the history of media. I kind of was content to watch the same 10 or so movies and play the same 10 or so games. And then when I got to a certain point, I realized that I hadn't seen a whole lot. And being in the hobbies that I was in, I started going through the history of video games. And about a year into that, I realized I kind of wanted to see it all. I wanted to figure out how we got here. It's something we'll probably talk about a lot as we get through the series. But every little story beat in the history of media explains how we're at the point that we're currently at. And I think that's really important. And it's media is one of those subjects where it can really tell you a lot about the society of the time. It can tell you a lot because it is the most detailed record of ourselves that we have. And in that process, somehow, I managed to rope Scyther into this.
um, the so for me, when I was exploring, the internet, because I love exploring, it's a fun pastime of mine. What really got me into it was the Wayback Machine. Is I explored a bunch of dead circles. That's what they were generally referred to because it's all about the same topic, but it's in a circle. You love that stuff. It's great. It's a whole room about cats and a whole room about dogs. It's a whole fun thing. But for me, what really got me in there was the homebrew for tabletop games. What got me into tabletops in general was Ados here. He we met on a Gmod server that didn't last like fucking like what 3 days. It disappeared like right after.
Yeah, so we met on a sci-fi military RP server because we were both mega nerds
Mm-hmm.
and we were both on those quite a bit. And I remember very distinctly. I was in one of the ops, right, one of the events, and it was terrible. But so I was afterwards just hanging out in like the lobby area of the server, and I started info dumping about a tabletop game I was writing to Scyther, and that's how we met. And it was just kind of like that.
Yep, and it's funny to say that my first tabletop game was not an official one, or or even a well-known unofficial one. It was Tales of Waterfell, right?
Yeah, it was Tales of Waterfell, and that eventually turned into Age of Iron, which for both of us, both projects kind of mostly helped with our game design principles, which is
Yes.
not. I guess it will become relevant once we get to tabletop games because I think if we were to brag about anything, we do know quite a bit about tabletop game design, and For me, I haven't mentioned this yet. I do know quite a bit about media. Like I said, I've been going year by year, and I'm currently in 1939 as the time of recording, and
uh,
I am suffering.
me and the boy here, we sat down together for one German movie because I know German. It was a fun time explaining all
we
that.
yes, the we've always it's always been nice to help each other with our projects, and this is going to be a lot of fun. Today we are talking about the very early days of media, the earliest days, in fact. We are talking about the 1890s.
Ooh.
Uh, and when I mention this to people, their first thought is, "There's movies from the 1890s."
The other thing, of course, we'll be talking about beyond just the movies, but mind you, the main topic here for today is the movies. We
Yeah, it's
will
film.
we'll be talking about music, or rather the preservation of the tech. The preservation in the tech. And while we have some time left in here, there's not really a set deadline for any of this stuff. Video games, or rather games, because video games don't exist in this time frame.
They won't exist for another 80 years, I think.
Give or take.
Yeah, 80 years. Um, so yeah, I think, is there anything else that we haven't? I can't think of anything.
um, hmm. I don't think there's anything else we can really talk about there. We can just hop right into the actual main topic, man.
Yeah, let's get to the list. So technically, this first one isn't from the 1890s, but it is very close, and there's literally like seven preserved films from the 1880s. So I'm not going to bother. Our first one that we're talking about is what is widely considered one of the first films of all time. There is one film. It's French and was filmed in Japan, and it was a like a telescope basically. And it's not technically a film because it is, I think, 6 frames. It is our real first actual film is the Round Hay garden scene, and it is 2 seconds long.
For 2 seconds, I have a lot written for it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that is going to be a trend that is going to continue with this series.
Fortunately, at least with the 1890s, there's not too much to say because they're all relatively short. The longer ones, you would think I would have written more for them, but no. It was the shorter ones that I wrote a lot more for.
Yeah. So the Round Table Garden scene, if you were to just look it up, it's on YouTube. Everything before 1929, by the way, is public domain. So everything from 1928 and before.
Oh,
So
if you don't mind, I must interrupt you. Hey, people, if you are in the chat, I will be dropping our boy right here, Adoz's YouTube channel with all his awesome music. Please go check it out.
oh no, don't, oh no, don't, oh Lord.
I
Why do
will.
you do this to me?
I will also be dropping down the Cursed Curator's YouTube channel, which has nothing on it just yet. But this VOD will be going over there. It'll be more or less an archive channel until I get the permission to stream on YouTube. Yay!
Yay, YouTube. Yes, that is fair.
You may continue.
So yeah, it is 2 seconds long. It's just kind of a clip of some people walking. There are some funny factoids about this. Well, one of them is not very funny, but the whole clip is quite. What I find interesting about it, and I'm sure you'll have your set of notes, um, is this is one of the oldest, like, this is the oldest piece of film that we have of people. You know what I mean? This is like
Yeah,
the last echoes of an era that is long since past. I want you to think there's not a living human being who is alive during this film, I'm pretty sure.
there is
Um,
not.
no, because they would have to be like 140. So, like, every single person who was alive when this was filmed is dead now. And I think that kind of speaks to film preservation for me and just preservation in general,
Yeah,
because these are the only, the besides literature obviously, these are the last messages from these people that we will ever see, right? This is it.
Yeah.
and I think that really it it's kind of sad in a way because it means that there's before 17 or 1876, which is when that other film, it's French, I can't say the title very well. That's it. There's not really any film before that. So this is it. I know I keep saying it, it's just it's really weird to me to think about.
It's both sad and just it has a lot of mystery there. Like, wow, how are things really? I mean, yeah, of course, we we have written documentation, but most of those people aren't exactly going to write about the day to day lives. They'll give a summary, but it's not the damn nitty gritty, and that's the stuff we really want to see. Um,
Yeah, and I think what makes this so interesting to me is especially because like if you take a photograph of someone that's staged, right? People get ready for hours to get their picture taken in this time. Literature is very much curated by the culture. When you're just filming stuff, like we'll see some of these later films from the 1890s, these are just like a guy placing a camera in New York, right? It's so pure, it's just so this is real.
Yeah. Speaking of factoids, did you know in this very short film, the lady in black, she dies just 10 days later after this?
Yes, I remember hearing about that. That is wild. So she is also the first person filmed to have died after being filmed.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, I want to get into my notes for this lovely little film.
Yeah, let's go over it.
So this piece of a film here is truly unique in the fact that it gave us a view into how people were dressing at the time, which I really like. I love that the people from like what, like 135 years ago, give or take, they were moving around, which people back then had to be like complete magic. um, I of course asked myself if this film was really truly anything special, and the answer is well, no. It's not special when comparison to rest of film out there, but it's special in the fact that it's as you said, this is something that was like the first. It's literally the first. But the first is not always something that's going to be grand and amazing. It can be something so simple like walking. um,
A guy awkwardly walking in a circle.
yeah. Um, it's just really cool that it's something that's so forgotten from a long time ago. It's so astounding to us modern folk, but for them it's like this is just the norm. Um, Unlike a lot of other films that we talk about, is I have nothing to actually say negative for it because it's kind of grandfathered in. It's so short that it's truly precious. It's history. Um, what I will say is that their drip is impeccable. That's all I gotta say.
They had some that lady, I think it's the not the lady in black, the other one. Um yeah, they had some very strange fashion sense, but I kind of dig it.
Yeah. So should we go on to the next film?
Oh yeah. The next film is unironically very entertaining. It is The Boxing Cats from 1894. And it is just a film of some guy holding two of his cats by their scruff, and I think they're wearing boxing gloves. And you know how
Yes.
cats are, so he's making a mock boxing match, and it is the cutest thing on the planet.
So when I was watching it, um, I was mad, um, because it never became an actual sport between cats. I was really pissed off. Like, why is this not an actual sport? But film wise, I think that it's very nice to see that even back in 1894, that cats are still well cats. I think from a film's perspective, it's nice to have a recording of animals way back when, on record. And I loved the little sacks they attached to the cat's paws. It wasn't like like regular boxing gloves that we have now. Because back then the gloves weren't like we have now. I don't really say.
They didn't look like gloves; they looked more like they were trying to prevent people from hurting themselves.
Yeah, if I had to say one negative about this damn film is the arse holding back the damn cats. I had bet money on the one on the left.
Okay. I mean, the film does open with the cat on the left tackling the other one, so I do see. Yeah, what I find interesting about the boxing cats is that we have been filming our pets since the technology was commercially available.
Oh man, that is so cool. I just love that.
Something you learn from history is that like people don't really change, and one of the things that's really wholesome about that is people have always loved their animals and have always found them adorable.
Very true.
Yeah, a lot of these. There's not a lot to them, but they are kind of interesting from a historical perspective. The next one is a little more interesting. The Waterer Watered, which is the most French name for a comedy I've ever heard.
This one actually got me to laugh. So,
Some comedy is timeless.
this lovely little comedic skit. You see, I'm a person that it takes a lot to actually give me a laugh, but it gave me a genuine one, which I like that. It's this film it's so rare and wholesome. It's such a wholesome prank going on here. Um, it's it's just it's something that for modern day where pranks can be so elaborate, it makes it like a whole jerk or a jackass. But this the person doing the prank got their comeuppance. They got a few smacks on the butt. It was good. No one got hurt. It was just a matter. It was good. I like that stuff.
It's just a funny, wholesome little film. Um, it's essentially just a guy watering, and a little kid steps on the water hose, and then when the waterer looks down the water hose, he releases his foot, and it's that gag. Which, weirdly enough, that is a gag that has persisted for over a century.
I love that.
A lot of these things, it's so interesting because these things have like persisted. A lot of these early, very primitive forms of film, like we don't watch them in the same way. An interesting thing about some of these films, especially as we're getting to the next couple ones, they're called actualities. So just people filming things. Like I said, the guy setting a camera in New York on a street. Um, and we still do that. We don't sit in a theater and watch it like they did in the 1890s. But what we do is we use it for what's called, like B-roll, right? We use it for background stuff. And
Yeah,
it's interesting to see that like we still do things the same we still do the same things that we did in the 1890s, but for different reasons and in a different way.
exactly. So next up is the Mechanical Butcher, which I loved. It's the first science fiction, right?
Yes. Before I get to that, fun thing about the Water Watered, just very quickly, these allegedly the first film to ever feature a poster,
Ooh.
uh, and you can actually see it. I believe we put it on the slideshow.
I think I got it in there. If I don't, I have to add it in. I,
Yeah, it's fine. Um, yeah, I thought that was fun. The Mechanical Butcher, though, that one it's kind of a strange film to talk about because, like you said, it is technically the first sci-fi film, but that is a tiny bit contentious.
yes, but
Uh,
but there's a really good argument, at least for this film. It
yes,
makes sense with a deeper context.
exactly. I think quickly let me describe the film. It is just a guy who puts a pig in like a cart, and then various pork-related things come out, like sausages and chops, just come out of the machine.
Yeah. Um, which is, the mechanical butcher. It's a device that automatically does it for you, so you, the human, don't have to chop it up yourself no more. Um,
That's some 1800s futurism if I've ever seen it.
yeah, that's why it's pretty contentious. For people now, it's like that's not sci-fi at all, but for them, it's like it is. It literally is. Um, but if I'm being honest, my first time viewing this, I had no clue what was actually going down in this at all. I'm like, I didn't understand this. I don't know why it's science fiction until it hit me. The technology you're talking about, it didn't exist yet. Well, rather, it may have existed, but it was so rare the common man would never have saw it. It's like with the jeeps. For example, jeeps they existed in the army for for a good period of time. But for people that were civilians, we didn't know about them yet. It's kind of funny to me. Um, but going a bit further into my notes here, the idea that this mechanical device that can slaughter a pig so quickly must have been like magic to those people watching. But for us, it leaves us scratching our heads, very confused. It's like, what? You don't? Or you didn't already have this? No, honey. It takes time to build these things up. Um, but I think that's where where the magic is with this film. It's dated and terribly so, but that's a good thing, mind you. As we keep going with these films, we're gonna see a lot of things that don't age well. Some things aged horribly, other things aged well. It's pretty good. It didn't hit the mark on everything, but it hit pretty good. The mechanical butcher in this case is it, it's a device that's so commonplace, man. But for negatives, I have nothing to say. It's a film that set its time, and I can't really judge it for that.
I think something interesting on that kind of point is yeah, a lot of films, especially when we get to the 30s, are not going to age very well. And anyone who's anyone who's watched a classic 30s film will know exactly what I'm referring to. Uh, but yeah, I think it's interesting. I would agree with you. It does count as sci-fi. I also think it's really funny how media illiterate people, I'm probably illiterate in general, people who are in the 1890s, which isn't a bad thing. I was there wasn't much media. That this is such a simple camera trick. This is like call it or our film college 101 trying to do this trick. But to them, this is magic. Like this is crazy, and we're
Yeah.
gonna see a lot of those tricks pretty soon.
Now, if now is this the film that was technically has the first usage of a special effect? I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of the ones that was like very early one.
Yeah, so there's a couple films from 1895 that all have these kinds of effects, like the Mechanical Butcher, the next film we're about to talk about. Those questions are difficult to answer because film preservation in this period is so spotty because it's a 130-year-old film.
Yeah.
It's going to be spotty. This is all nitrate, I'm pretty sure.
The
Uh,
next one we have here, sorry cutting you off there if you had anything else to say.
no, 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 that was it.
It's
You're
the
good.
execution of Mary Stuart, which, mind you, this is not considered the first ever horror film. No, it's not. Even though I personally believe it should be labeled as such, because it's dark. It's pretty damn dark.
It's
Um,
it's literally a woman being executed using camera tricks.
yeah. In my notes here, the film was disturbing to say the least, and our old boy Thomas Edison might get the label of snuff director, because, well, for other reasons, not just this.
Yeah, it's not on my list. But he did make another film from around this period, I'm pretty sure. It's just called Electrocuting an Elephant, and it is precisely what it sounds like.
Yeah. Um, yeah. We're probably not going to talk about that very much. While this is, oh, okay, I already noted that. I don't have anything else to really say about this. It's execution. It's grim. It's dark. And while I personally love grim and dark things, this is not the time or place.
It does feel very out of place if you look for the other films of the 1890s. We have a lot of films that are just like, here's a shot of something, here's a funny skit, here's a woman being executed. It kind of comes out of left field.
Yeah.
Um, I do think it is of interesting use of the camera trick, though that being said, I think out of all the films on this list, it is the worst executed.
While I don't entirely disagree, there is one way later on. I will I'll make an argument for it because it's just so bad to me. It's so ugh.
Fair. Um, I as for the horror, I do think I would agree if insofar as the standard of the time for counting a Devil's Castle film we'll be talking about shortly as a horror film, then I think certainly this would
Yeah.
count more so as the shock value side.
Ooh, we can consider it the first ever shock one. Oh.
I'd consider it a shock film, yeah.
The Dickinson experimental sound film, which I liked.
Yeah, it's a lot of people say that The Jazz Singer is the first sound film, and well, technically it is the first full length feature sound film. The first sound film is the Dixon Experimental, and this one is weird. It is just a guy playing violin while people are dancing. It's more of a proof of concept, hence experimental.
Yeah. in my notes, I gotta get a little wacky here. Uh, is the first ever sound film. The quality was cheeks, but it was unexpected to me. That dude was really jamming out on that violin. And those two guys were dancing on together to it, which was I'm like, oh, that's a little weird, but you know what? I'm here for it. Let's dance. Dan, dan, dan. But all seriousness, this piece of media is truly important. You know, it's very important. But to see as a collective society, you know, where we were at in media, and you know, for sound, it started with this. You know, it was a rough start in my opinion, very rough. But just about everything you know we see out there had a rough start, and eventually we got found our way. And in some cases, we didn't. But yeah.
If there's one thing this journey will teach both of us, is that it's kind of already taught me, is that the first of something is almost inevitably not going to be the best.
There's only one thing I can actually think of that has had very little. Well, mind you, in for the West, I don't know the East has had very little change since its creation. Uh, was toilets. Interestingly enough, there's very little change.
Yes, that is true. Um, but in film terms, at least, I think I think a lot of it comes down to, for this. It is interesting to see it for a sound film. An interesting kind of history tidbit about this era and about the silent era in general is, a common misconception is that people were just like okay with silent film until 1927. The truth of the matter is that people have been trying to make sound films since film was invented. Edison, very obviously in this circumstance, is trying to make sound films work. Now, recording sound and recording film at the same time has never been an issue. What was an issue, and what we'll see repeatedly people trying to fix, is synchronizing the sound when you play it back. Because you have to remember, old timey projectors and old timey film stuff had a tendency to jam, and there was also a requirement for old film reels to be switched out mid film. That's
Hmm.
why you always hear, for old films, you might hear the term two reeler. That's referring to a film that is physically on two reels.
Okay.
So the issue has always been trying to get the audio to sync with the video. And we don't get that effectively until 1927.
Okay.
At least in most circumstances, at least for a feature length film. But we see, even in this very early state, people are trying to make it work. And I think that is really, really interesting and really exciting that people were already looking to the future, literally like 10, 20 years since the camera had been invented, the video camera had been invented.
um. So we have on our list next. Let me make sure I have everything right here. Is The
Yeah.
Kiss.
It's just a film of a married couple kissing.
Okay, so I have all sorts of things to say about this damn film. This is this is one of the films where I actually got heated, like like for no real reason because it's just a couple kissing. I'm not an incel, I swear.
Scyther's about to come on and be like, women, smacks table.
Honestly, not to say here. I mean, it's cool to see a romantic gesture from over 100 years ago on camera, and I believe this will be the first ever recording of such a damn thing. But
Fun fact about this film,
but
people wrote to the Pope to have it censored.
um, but in this film, this is the first example where we see a man give his all, but that woman was barely giving any kisses back.
Oh no. Do you have like a political stance on this film?
Yes, you see, it goes to show you that women will never change. A man will put his entire heart in. I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
About to go to Rumble, I see.
We're about to get kicked right off.
We're gonna see you walking down the street shirtless next stream, screaming at random people about being red pilled.
This next one. Well, do you have anything else to say about the kiss, or do you want me to go to the next one?
No, this was the first film, as far as I'm aware, to be have calls for censorship from the public. And it is so funny to me that people were so angry about a married couple kissing very lightly on camera, because wow, how times have changed.
The next one is New York Broadway at Union Square. As a
Catchy title.
Yeah. You see, as a person who grew up in a city that had tons of trolleys at one point, and mind you, there's no trolleys here anymore. And when I was growing up, there was never a trolley to begin with either. But we had tons of a trolley track still around. Interestingly enough, um, but it's so weird to me to see, at once a very commonplace mode of transportation, just there, and I'm like, wow, we don't have that no more. It was just really
It's
cool.
that thing we've been talking about, like times changing and stuff, and it is wild every time we see it.
Now, this is a little quick tidbit. It's a little fun fact from your boy who loves trains and trolleys. Is that there was actually a movement to bring back trolleys because trolleys are debatably better than buses. But
Keyword is debatably.
the problem is, well, of course, big bus, but other than big bus, trolleys are just harder to handle with regular car traffic. And the problem is sorting out that issue. And it's too much for, well, the underfunded MTA and the other uh, stuff as well. So that's something there to get your mind wrapped around. Some towns and cities are actually trying to bring it back still, even now. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, and I do think trolleys are interesting, and it is really cool to see them. It is also cool to just see people just walking who probably don't even realize they're being filmed, half of them.
Yeah,
Um, and that kind of brings an interesting point. We see it in a couple of these films, just the absolute nonchalantness people react to being like no one cares.
true. The one thing I will say is that clearly back then we had superior, crossing guards to now. These guys were effective. They were quick because if they weren't quick, you would die because trolley.
Yeah, I don't know if they're better. They're just more in fear of their life.
That's all we have for this is rather short. A lot of these are rather short, but which I like. It helps us blitz right through these bad boys. Next one is A Nightmare.
Yes. It has a name in French that I cannot say because I am not French. This is one of the I think this is the first Millier film that we're covering. Millier is pretty much considered the inventor of modern special effects, and he is a master of his craft for his day. Obviously, nowadays his things would be considered rather novel. Some of them are still interesting. We'll see it in a couple of his other films. I think A Nightmare does have some interesting special effects, like the giant moon head,
Ooh.
which he would reuse for a trip to the moon. That trick. This is fun. I like this film. I think it's quite entertaining. What do you think about it?
So, you know what? As a person who grew up in the early 2000s, the best way to describe this film is that it totally would have aired on Adult Swim. It just feels like something that would have popped up on there, man, to be forgotten until one day you stumble upon it again. Like, wow, this wasn't a fever dream.
It's like those 3 a.m. infomercials that they do.
Yeah, so this film obviously was all over the place, which is intentional. It's a damn nightmare. They're supposed to be all over the place generally, and it's one fueled by drugs. There has to be somebody on drugs here.
Yeah, no, I I like it, but it is something you'll find with Millier's work is that it is kind of all over the place because his films were more so a showcase of his special effects ability and his costume design.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of that has influenced his style and has made it more entertaining to a modern audience and has also made it a lot more dated to a modern audience.
very true. Um, this next one is children digging for clams.
These kids do be digging for clams. I can confirm.
I have an
It
opinion on
is
this one.
literally this is literally so let me some context. Like remember you might remember I mentioned actuality film like 10, 20 minutes ago. This is one of those.
Yeah.
Uh, This is just like the Lumiere brothers, who were the kings of actuality film, just setting up a camera and being like, okay, all right, kids, dig for them clams.
um, when I was watching this, my first initial thought was that those adults have to be hot as hell in that weather. Um, but then
They were
again,
wearing like 7 layers.
yeah. But then again, if they're digging for clams, well, I don't know about clams, but I do know for oysters, it's generally pretty cold around. Well, at least where I live, it's generally cold around oyster season. Um, but
You gotta also remember this is in France.
yeah. Um, Then I turn my attention to the little ones digging for clams, and then I'm like, wow, they're all happy and having fun. Personally, now this is me. This is my own personal life here. I hate fucking clams. I hate them so much, and I was so irritated watching them dig for them. I'm like, no, 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 kids, don't do that. They're horrible for you. But then
Telling kids who have been dead for 100 years.
but then I remember they're also French, and my inner German is like, eh. I'm pushing the boundaries here. I'm gonna shut up now. Um, Overall, the film, it captures life of the time, and I can appreciate that, even if I don't particularly care for the subject matter.
I, 1 out of 10, I hate clams.
Literally.
I also don't like clams, but it is so weird to see that now in our modern day, children often wear different kinds of clothes than adults do. But it is so funny to see an era where kids just like were miniature adults. Like they're wearing the frilly dresses and they're getting into it. Like if you watch the film, which I do recommend watching any of these since they're all just on YouTube, they're they're all just they're getting to it. They're like, "Oh, I haven't eaten today."
The next one is the Air of Cartier. Cartier? I can only pronounce that.
Cortege, I think. I don't know. This is another Lumiere brothers film. They went to Egypt, I want to say, um, or it might be the city of Cortege. Or I doubt it. But this is either way. This is kind of a melting pot city. You see Arab people, and it is really interesting because this is during the height of British colonialism.
Yep. One thing you will see in the film is that there is a toddler walking around, and I'm like, wow, even that toddler is dead now.
I know it's so wild to think we're not going to get to an era where any of these people are alive for at least another 30 years. But realistically, we're not going to see anyone who's actually alive for another 50, 60.
Yeah. So this film, at least my notes, it's a thing where I love observing people walking around in my real life to begin with, but seeing these people wearing these nifty clothings is my favorite part there. But overall, the film ain't special at all. But it's just nice seeing people go about their business. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to watch again the such a far off time in a country that's so far off and was probably at the time not really in the public consciousness.
This next one is very simple, very sweet. It's Chicago Police Parade.
I just included this in the list because it's wild seeing what American police officers used to look like in the 1890s because the style is not even what you're thinking. You're probably thinking 1930s through 50s policemen. They got the blue shirt and all that, and they look really tacky. These guys look like they'd beat the shit out of you if you looked at them funny.
So for me, your uniforms look goofy because I like goofy. It's clear to me that the influence of the uniforms are still from the Victorian era, but the Victorian era is basically over at this standpoint, or just
We're in the
about.
closing years of the Victorian.
Yeah, so the uniforms are clearly going through a transition period because you can see some of the next period, in them, but it's still set in its time. It's a great time. Nothing else really to say about this
It
one.
I think it's in that what we said about earlier. It's really invaluable to have films like this to, especially considering it's in that transitional period. We get to see a police outfit from this time, and I'm sure we're not. Neither of us are historians. We just like history.
Yeah,
Um, but I'm
the
sure historians do appreciate films like that, where you can see in motion how these outfits were worn, what the average police officer on parade, of course, looked
yep.
like.
The one cool, neat fun fact here, or rather less of a fun fact, and more it's kind of sad to think about it in a deeper context. Um, so for body armor, which there was none just yet. Um,
we're,
so
we're in an era where people are like, "Hey, you get shot, you get shot."
you get shot, you generally die. If you don't die, you're gonna wish you died because it's infected.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so for body armor, they would come up with all sorts of different ways to protect, because generally you get shot in the torso. So the usual method was a sand or a parsley of some sort. I can't remember what it was. It's been forever since I've been in high school, but it was some sort of a weird thick bag they would wear over their chest until eventually you're like, wait, let's just use like metals or like some sort of fabrics that are tough. But it would take some time even from there to eventually perfect it.
Yeah, no, I think I keep saying yeah, no. I think something about I think these are really interesting like outfits because we're still in that like late Victorian era where people just don't wear armor because they feel like it's pointless.
Yep. Um, the next one is the Blackfriars Bridge. I believe that bridge no longer exists.
I'm pretty sure you're correct on that.
While you speak on this film, I will look that up.
Yes. So this is another one of those. Is this the one with the double carriages? I think it is. Yes.
Yes.
Um, this is just a shot of a bridge. It is quite literally just people walking around horses. It is wild to see an era where film exists, but horses are still like predominantly used for transportation. Um,
So,
I don't. Do you know when cars start becoming more dominant than horses?
I believe was it the mid 1910s?
Something like that. That sounds about right. So it is wild to think that there's an entire era of film that takes place before such a thing.
Yeah. Also, the bridge is still around, but it doesn't look that much like how it used to in this like in the film. But that's usually expected, obviously.
That's fair. If you Another interesting thing, I didn't realize double decker carriages were a thing.
I only knew about those because of Assassin's Creed.
It is funny how a lot of people learn about their history, including me. I'm not saying I'm special.
I got a good portion of my history from video games, so
Unfortunate. I'm in that boat as well. But yeah, there's not too much to say about the Blackfriar Bridge.
yeah.
It's just a thing that I found. This one
Okay,
there is a
okay.
story behind this next one.
May I be autistic for a second and just gush over the train?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, tell us about the
So
train.
this film, The Arrival of the Train, when I first saw it, I got to see that beautiful 240 steam engine come right down towards that
Do you
camera.
know what kind of train it is?
I know what kind of train that is. I grew up around them. So
You'd actually know what kind of train that is.
yes, it was either a 240 or I believe, a 440. But no, it has most characteristics of a 240. But you see, where I grew up, there was this train track, and it was connected to a thing called the B&O Railroad. Mind you, it's one of the most well, excuse me, it was one of the most important railways in the entire country, or at least on the East Coast. Um, it was such an interesting railroad and had tons of different trains. Fun fact, gotta rep my state. My state had the first ever electric train. So yeah, but
Hey,
back to my
trains.
notes. It gave me chills seeing it. I'm like, oh my god, it's such a beautiful train, man, even in black and white. And I also heard a rumor that people literally got scared watching this back then.
there's there's a story that has not been confirmed. We don't actually know if it's true. That people who had never seen a film before. Now, if you look at the film, The Arrival of a Train, it's just a train coming to a station, but the train is coming towards the camera. And there's a story that people didn't realize that it was just a movie and ran out of the theater screaming because they thought the train was going to hit them. And a lot of people, we don't know if this actually happened. There's no confirmation. One side says that stupid people weren't that thick in the 1890s. My camp, however, says, yes, I believe people were that stupid in the 1890s.
Yes. Um, as we know, with a lot of things with humans, if it sounds dumb, we probably happened.
I don't
Um,
think it happened a lot, but I'm 100% sure it happened at least once to one person.
well, people talked about, for example, the movie Saving Private Ryan, and some people exaggerate just a bit of it, but soldiers who saw it, that served on D-Day, people reported them crying, screaming, and they were having PTSD. That did happen. that actually happened. So it's a reaction. It's a
It's
nice reaction.
emotional.
Yeah, and seeing a train come at you, if you never seen before, yeah, that's gonna scare you.
Yeah, no, I think it's totally plausible. Again, we don't have confirmation. We don't know if it ever actually happened.
Fun fact, because we're both Civ 5 people, we played it before. In the
Oh,
opening
too much.
movie, we see people get scared at the train.
Oh yeah, that is in the Brave New World trailer.
Yep.
Oh my goodness! Wow, you brought that one way back. I didn't think about that game for a while.
The nice deep cut that I remembered out of nowhere.
I'm sure as we go on, we're going to be thinking, "Hey, wait a second."
um,
Um,
this next one made me feel uncomfortable.
oh, which one is this?
The
Oh,
Sandow.
Sandow. Yeah, it's just a half naked man flexing.
This is my notes. It's like word for word. I watched an ancient dude flex his muscles. That was a thing. That is all.
You didn't have an awakening.
No, still straight.
Okay, you know what? That's fair. To be honest, even myself, I was like, oh, no, not too much, too much.
This next one is better though. The Devil's Castle.
Yes, yes, this is the widely accepted first horror film. This is another Millier film, and you can tell because I'm pretty sure Millier might have had ADHD.
This is unrelated, but I actually wish I would have downloaded all the videos and made like a compilation in the background as we talk. I'm gonna do that next
Yes, since some of them are going to be actually there are no feature length films for this time, so it's fine.
time.
Um, yeah, so this is still in prototype.
Yeah, but
The series.
we'll figure it all out. It'll all come together eventually.
Yes. Um, oh, doing a lot of ums. My apologies. This is an interesting film. It has a lot of classic horror elements, especially for this period. There's a devil. I think there's a vampire. Maybe there's some ghosts. It keeps up the pace. I would say that for sure. It is definitely entertaining above all else.
So, as you know from me by now, is it takes a lot to really scare me, like a lot.
Yes, too
Um,
much.
so this film for me wasn't scary at all because I'm me. But I can see how it could be scary for anybody back then. I can see it. Sure.
Yeah, I mean to be fair, it's not scary to me either. It's very like wow.
You know what? Right now, we can show this to some kids. They'd be scared as hell. I can guarantee it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure a little kid, presuming they haven't been brain rotted to hell with like
Skibidi toilet.
scary videos on YouTube. Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Uh, I would presume that this would be quite frightening. And generally speaking, if you want to figure out, hey, is this going to be scary to someone? Show it to a child, and if it was scary to them, it'll probably be scary to a person of that time period.
Yeah, so for me, I found the plot of the film to be, interesting, but overall, it's something that left me more confused and with questions than anything else.
We're in an era before title cards, so a film can't really have a real plot. It's really hard to convey those things.
Yeah. There is one film in here that doesn't convey it well enough where I'm like, okay, I get the quote unquote plot. Okay, I dig it. Um, the next one after this one is gonna be very simplistic. But I
Yes.
also have some fun facts because I now know all the people's names in the film.
You did way more research than I did for these movies. Usually I do quite a bit of research, but for these, like, it's the 1890s. Who cares? All right, this is a pillow fight, and it does live up to its title. It is two little girls having a pillow fight, and I feel weird enough just saying that I watched a film with that premise.
I feel weird too. I feel even more weird knowing that I'm the one that did the research and I know all their names.
It's academic, it's fine.
I know a bunch of damn dead little girls' names. You know what?
Oh my god,
Put that
don't
on my
describe it like that.
put that on my resume. This short film is quite wholesome. It shows a group of young girls having a pillow fight. It isn't anything amazing or crazy, but it does capture the joy of these young girls who are long gone. It also gets a brief view of the sleepwear and fashion of the time for young folks, which is pretty cool. Um,
I don't know how I would describe it. It's very weird looking, the outfits of the time, but I suppose it just looks weird to us.
yeah, so one of the girls is named Louise Marie Ronster Bunting. and her sister's name is Florence. Mhm.
Why,
Yeah,
why has that first girl got 5 names?
so annoying. I hate that.
Can you tell we're still in the Victorian?
Yes. Also, debatably, we can call this the first quote unquote sorority girl scene, but with like kids. So no.
Let's not do that. Let's not describe it like that. Let's go on to the next film.
Let's keep it weird, baby.
Here on Cursed Curations, we always keep it weird, but
Okay.
only acceptable weird.
This next one, I like this one. The old man drinking a glass of beer.
It kind of is just the title.
Yes, but you see, this lovely film, as a title, shows a lovely old gentleman. He's jovial, drinking a beer, and he's pretty gosh darn happy. Interestingly, with my research I've done here with this film, that this man is 35 years old. So calling him old is a bit well for us today is like no, he's not old at all. He's like not even in the middle of his life yet. But for
He's
then,
not middle aged.
yeah, but for then, you got to remember the mortality rate is pretty high still. So for him, yeah, it's pretty old. Like in my mind, like oh yeah,
Oh, I couldn't. I didn't even think about that. That is depressing.
yeah. I mean, he's happy. That's you know what? I'm glad he was happy. Like about that.
He is overacting, though. Oh my god.
Yeah, this next film is very simplistic. It's exactly as the title says. Mr. Edison at work in his chemical laboratory.
I have a beef with this movie because it is actually there's a weirdness to this. Okay, Mr. Edison is not in his laboratory. Okay, there is okay. Gotta remember, electricity is pretty spotty in this time, and I know we're talking about literally Mr. fucking Edison, but their light sets don't have lights yet. Meaning all sets rather are outdoors. So you can't film indoors really. You notice with pretty much all of these films, none of them are really indoors.
Yeah,
Uh, so he's not actually working in his laboratory. He's on a set in the middle of the most likely the field.
yeah. Um, I didn't know that. So in my notes, I said, and I quote, "It's super cool watching a historical figure like Mr. Edison in his quote unquote lab, and just doing what he probably would do at the time. It's kind of uncanny watching this dude who's super dead.
Historically significant as well.
Yeah, not to say here, man. It's just that this is cool for history's sake, but otherwise it's kind of mid.
Very mid. Another thing, once we get later on, we're going to start rating things, but I feel like it is unfair to rate films that are 12 seconds long.
Yeah, and even the ones that are long, quote, for this time frame, there's not too much going on here, and I feel like they deserve the grandfather status, or you can't really judge them because they're working out what they have.
They're more experiments than what we would consider films, and I think another. Oh, we're going to skip that one. You got mad at me because I made a typo for this one,
Yeah,
understandably.
yeah, I got mad.
This film, catchiest title ever, by the way. Divers at work at the wreck of the Maine, which
He's
I put as the week of the Maine.
yeah, he did that. I got angry. I'm a grammar Nazi.
At least it's only grammar.
Meanwhile,
Um,
me, who always has grammar fucked up anyway.
it's fine. Um, this is a really weird film because okay, this is an actual boat that sunk. Right? They're not obviously filming on location, but not only are they filming an actual boat that has sunk, the boat sunk the same year this film was made.
Yeah, and usually in a modern day, we would wait a few years or even a decade before we cover an event like that.
This also started a war, by the way. This boat sinking, I believe, it caused the Spanish American War.
Sounds about right.
So so part of me's like, why would you make a movie about this? It'd be like, imagine making a movie about an actual tragedy that just happened. Not like a documentary, just like a movie. Like a short film, just being like, hey, here's some guys digging up bodies.
Um, so the only real negative I'd say about this whole thing was the prop. The prop was shit. I said it. The dead body prop was dog shit.
This, I mean, to be fair, I to be fair to your point, even by the standards of the time, these props are a little like ooh, a little stagey.
Yeah.
I also think the way they made it look underwater was really funny because I was expecting they just put like a filter over the lens, but I guess people hadn't thought of that yet, and probably cameras were also really janky. So, so you just see, you just there's these like painted water lines all over the set,
Yeah. The fish were a really nice touch. I like the little fish going around.
which are clearly being moved by a guy off screen.
Yeah.
All films from this period sorry, feel like they are art student projects. What do we have next? Oh, the four troublesome heads. This is just camera tricks,
Yeah.
and it's kind of fun.
I didn't have too much to say about it. I thought it was nice. It was neat. But it didn't do anything outlandish enough for me to really warrant a whole paragraph.
It probably would have been really wild to someone from the period.
Most definitely.
Let's see. The Temptation of Saint Anthony, another Edison film. Oh no, this is a Millier film. Sorry. This is a one set film, and it's about something from the Bible, I think.
Yeah.
Or it's something from Christian folklore. Either way, uh, is okay. There's some almost naked women in it, so
Based.
you go. Based. Hays Code who?
You know what? I think it's important to talk about. Even though we won't get to it for a bit now, the Hayes Code is probably important to talk about this for a little bit here.
I think a broader point we can make is about like film censorship and pushing boundaries because the Hays Code really set it back quite a bit. But in this period, people are really trying to push boundaries for the period.
The next film is The Astronomer's Dream, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and we'll get more into the Hays Code when we get to the 20s.
Yeah.
We're going to see why it was implemented, and we're going to be talking a lot about film censorship, especially in the first half of the coming century. Uh, it's going to be heavy, heavy stuff. The Astronomer's Dream, that one's fun. It's just another fun Millier film. What
I
do you
have
think of it?
a I have a whole thing for this.
What, did it give you nightmares?
No, 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 no. This film was a trip, a bloody trip, one might say. The background props were amazing. The
Oh, yeah.
all of it was amazingly well done. And now let me start on Nostrometer himself. Bro was going through it. He was fighting for his life, man. I also like the implication that all astronomers of the time wore wizarding hats. Let's bring that back.
you, you see that a lot with Millier's work. So this film was just it's just kind of a weird set of imagery from Millier,
Yeah.
but it is literally the astronomer looks like an old timey wizard from like a 30s fantasy movie. He looks ridiculous, and you see Millier's use that costume anytime there's an astronomer.
Now what I will say is that calling it the astronomer's dream felt like it felt like it felt like a better title than the astronomer's nightmare because that's what it really felt like.
Yeah, I we noticed Millier likes his dream sequences.
Especially with that damn freaking moon in the background. I'm like, oh yeah, this is clearly a nightmare.
Some poor kid in France in the 1890s got nightmares from that movie. Uh, I do like it, and something I've mentioned is I am a huge fan of Milie's work. If I could say his name right, I really like his dedication to special effects, and I think he really is influential and essential to understanding the history of film because you see a transition, and we'll get there when we get to the 1900s, but Millier turns film from these kind of gimmicky things to actual plots and makes film into a proper storytelling narrative system rather than just gimmicks, right? We see that with video games. The first 20 years of video games are just toys. And then people realize that they can tell stories with them. And I think Millier is doing a similar thing for film. He's realizing that you can tell stories using this medium.
Yeah, which this is one of the few films where, okay, of course, you can't really tell what the hell's going on, but it feels like there was at least an attempt to tell a plot going on, but it got lost in the scary sauce.
It got lost in Millier wanting to show off.
Yep, the next one. Okay, I have a whole damn rant about the next one. This is what I was talking about earlier, where like it's literally just bad.
Santa Claus?
Yeah, it's bad. It's horrible, actually. I would say it's like literally the worst one here.
You really don't like Santa Claus?
It's really horrible. It's just bad. It's really bad.
Is it just the quality of the film? Is it like the special effects are rough?
So I will read you my note here. Honestly, this film felt inferior to all the ones I've seen thus far, and also later on as well. I like the fact that they were also, that they seemingly projected the Santa Claus film. So, in a guy in the background would like slip through and could come in, but we saw the Santa actor's leg, so it defeated that whole purpose there of that projection. Um, we could see his leg, and that pissed me off. And the way he leaves was just so like they use special effect or like some dust or something. And no, he disappears. He's cut out of the whole film. Like what?
I definitely get that. It is kind of cheap feeling.
Yeah. So I won't hit it too hard, but it is clearly for me, clearly at least, the worst one in the entire list.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Unless I might consider, I don't know.
We're getting
Never
close
mind.
to
Actually, you're right.
we're getting close to one where it's a stand. I'm about to give it a standing ovation, but we're not there just yet.
Le Portrait.
I think me being a whole grammar guy here, it's le mystérieux portrait, but I can't speak French, so I can't say mysterious in French.
I didn't get the correct title. I'm sorry.
This one was
Sue
neat.
me, okay?
This one was neat.
Yeah, no, I think the clown at the end terrified the shit out of me.
Um, it was neat seeing a portrait interact, with the nearby man, and after set everything up, and there was not too much going on there. Um, it's compelling enough for the viewer to keep watching, which is very important for a film, especially something that's very relevant nowadays. Is that when you do a short, like on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, whatever. You want them to be compelling, or people to go like right off them. I feel like this is like the first example where we see actual compulsion to keep watching to see what's happening.
Yeah, there's that arms race of trying to keep people's attention.
Yeah, which I mean, it kept mine. So.
Hey, we're children of the brain rot era, so
So the next one is King John, and this one is a standing ovation for me.
it's really good. It's very unfortunate because I believe most of the film is lost.
Yes. The person who played King John gave his all. He was so impressive to me. Like he blew every else on that stage out the damn water. He was really giving his entire damn life into that.
I know he was into it.
Yeah, like I also I felt like it was intentional that everybody else there was so useless. Like the two guards, they were just staring at him, which it draws the viewer's eyes. You like, oh, okay, the guards are staring at him, so we should stare at the guy too. Which I'm like, wow, they're actually keeping my attention a lot here. I like that.
Yeah, the Mans is really chewing the scenery here.
Yeah. Not much to say here. I mean, it was a good enough film. It sucks that most of it's damn gone now.
Yeah, it was originally filmed in I think 5 parts that was attempting to tell the Shakespeare play King John. I do think it is weird that this is the first ever adaptation of Shakespeare,
Yeah.
but it's good for what it is. I would have loved to see the full film though. I think that would have been very interesting and probably one of the first proper narratives.
Yeah. The next one is The Sign of a Cross, and I have things to say about this one.
I I'm gonna be honest. I watched this and I have no idea what's going on.
So, what I understood from the film is that this is me shit posting, by the way. This is my fanfic about what's the whole thing going on. Is that is that this demonic entity appears, takes the form of a human, and he's trying to corrupt the area. And as we see him do so by putting demonic or satanic imagery in there, which scares off the nuns and all that other crap. And we see him try and fill up with his own followers, and eventually the cross destroys him because it's symbolic there. That good will defeat evil, or I guess in this case Christianity defeats Satanism or whatever. That's my fanfic, and that's what I'm going with.
Better than what I had. I just thought it was a bunch of weird visual effects
I'm
that
14
were
and this
vaguely
deep.
Christian themed. Oh, I can tell you're gonna have some weird analysis when we get to the when we get to films with a meaning.
This the next one is Arabian gun twirler. It's exactly as
It's
it
our
sounds.
last film.
It's exactly as it sounds.
It's an Arabian guy twirling his gun, and I just put it here because at the time it probably was very impressive, but now is comically unimpressive.
Yeah. The dude has moves. I'll say that. It's just a film of a guy showing his skill, and that I can appreciate. Nothing else to really say.
I would love to imagine how that film came to be. Like some guy was filming and he's like, "Hey, there's this guy who can twirl his gun really fast. You want to film him?" Oh hell yeah! The people back home are gonna love this.
um, wow. Those movies, they're interesting. Most of them, they existed and they did what they were supposed to do. They were showing off, what their thing was, and the other ones tried to give us a something of a story, not really. And they're showing off their skill, which I like. Nothing really to say here, other than fuck Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's that. You know what? Fair, honestly. I think a lot of the limitations of the technology of the 1890s play a part in how films are. We don't have title cards. We don't have sound. We don't have color. Most films can't be very long because of how large film is at the time. So, like, if you wanted a 12-minute film, you would have to put it on like 2 or 3 reels
Yeah.
because of how projectors worked. And that
So
is unfortunate that we have a serious limitation.
true. It does suck. So now we are on the next bracket is film in the 1890s. So what do we think about all these? Overall, we kind of already touched on it, but I think they're good. They're good for what they are, and we don't really need to judge them too harshly, unlike other things we'll be getting to very soon.
No, I think it's interesting. I think it is worth delving into if you have any kind of interest in media history. It won't take you very long, obviously. Um, I do think there's very limited entertainment value, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for outside of an academic perspective, with an academic perspective, I think there's a lot of fun to be had here, but it's just really rough.
Yeah. Um, what else do we have in our bracket? Oh, here we go. Music.
Yes, this is going to be us talking about music from the 1890s, and we're talking about the lack of music from the 1890s. We're in a period where there are effectively, in America at least, two genres. And can you guess what they are, Scyther?
Okay. I want to say, mm, for Americans, what I'm gonna say? Country and what's the other one? I can't say classic because I wouldn't really
Old.
old. Yeah, old music.
So general, there is some kind of folk soul music underground brewing. Generally speaking, though, the two kinds of music in the 1890s are classical
Okay.
and ragtime.
Ooh.
I believe there is some proto folk country music coming into existence, but I can't confirm that. I don't know entirely. Uh, yeah, neither are very good. A lot of the music from the 1890s is really rough. Not just because it's classical music, and unless you're into that, it's going to be pretty rough trying to listen to it. Uh, as well, there is kind of music recording, not really. The way that music is recorded is on aluminum rolls that almost look like toilet paper rolls.
They
And do you know what the biggest problem with this is, dear curator?
can get damaged easily.
They are good for exactly 2 to 3 uses before they are absolutely inaudible.
Oh, this is sad.
So pretty much all of our music from this time, as far as I understand it. Now, for anyone watching in the future, if I said anything incorrect, please let me know. I don't like saying things that are stupid. So so if I did, yeah, let me know about it, and I'll make a correction whenever I we do the next episode. Uh, Vice versa, or rather, the next episode that's being recorded at that time. So most of the music we have are like unsold of these like little wheels, these little cylinders. They also didn't store much music on them. So a lot of what we have is very fragmentary, and a lot of what we have, frankly, is just sheet music for classical stuff and ragtime, obviously.
Yeah.
So a lot of this has had to be re-recorded, and what hasn't had to be sounds like garbage.
So
It's rough. Have you listened to any 1890s music?
the one that I listened to a few times was the laughing song.
Yes. And I'm sure in that you could see oof audio.
Yeah.
So like with that, it is interesting because the film industry really predates the music industry by a long time. We don't see the music industry come into its own until the 20s, which is wild to me. Considering that music has been around since we were a species and had culture, it is wild that we there was no such thing as a music industry really.
Which I kind of like that people that made music weren't really thinking about making quote unquote money for it. It was just it was just a thing, man. We were just doing it, and I
Yeah, no, it was commissioned for like government stuff or just people in bars.
and I guess you could say it's more like that music was something that was really close to humans as a species, and rather than something that we don't sell. Well, we do sell air now, but it's
Yeah, I get what you mean.
yeah.
Uh, I do think some of the music from this period is nice. A lot of it, more so than other eras, is incredibly racist.
Yeah.
We are seeing the is Jim Crow affected? I think Jim Crow's early 20s, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So we're starting to see that like that growing movement. Uh and there's really not much else to the music. You've seen a little bit of it. It's just it's there.
Yeah, it's just how it is of at that time. It'll get better.
It will certainly get better, but I think we won't be talking too much about music until the 20s, until we get to Al Johnson.
Ooh, boy, it's gonna be a very fun time. Um,
Yes. I guess it's going to be pretty brief,
the,
but let's talk about gaming. Board
the
gaming, that is.
the fun part here is that we actually had a roughly 30 minutes planned out for music, but there's not really much stuff out here. So you know what?
Nah.
It works out. Um, Video games, or rather games. So, okay. I need to pull up a thing for that because I don't have it saved. Yay! My bad.
I do have something. There was apparently, according to an article I read, because I tried to do research on this, but as you can imagine, this isn't a very well documented subject. There
Yeah.
was apparently a board game craze in the 1890s and the late 1800s in general. Most of it revolved around. You might know this, Scyther. Do you know what the original point of Snakes and Ladders was?
Not entirely. It's been a long time, my friend.
It was preaching. It was like a morality game to teach kids morality. Originally, the snakes were sins and the ladders were
Oh,
virtues.
okay. Yep, I remember now.
Yeah. Um, or as I would say, cringe. Because that
It
is so lame.
is
And these
very.
morality board games were kind of very popular, and there was a lot of them. But there is one board game that isn't preachy. Y'all up for some Chinese checkers?
Oh, you gotta appreciate the Chinese.
I don't actually think it's from China. I'm pretty sure it isn't.
Probably not, but hey, Chinese checkers.
Yeah.
Um, so I do have a list of the board games that at least are released on Wikipedia. That's from 1890s.
Yeah.
Basalenda, Chinese checkers, the game of playing department store, Jolly Darky. Oh my God, is that what I think it is? Um,
No, 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 don't finish that title.
Kriegs. Okay, this is the one I can now say. Kriegspiel, which is this, it's just a chess variant, man. Leapfrog, Ludo, philosophy, shogi checkers, around the world with Nelly Bly and Solta. We will go over all these
Hey, I
except for
know
one.
Sultan.
I think you know which one I'm not going to talk about. Oh, that's not very Gucci, man.
You need to send me that in the DMs because I need to know. Oh no. Um, but like a lot of the playing depart. Oh no, no.
We can't talk about that at all.
Okay, yeah, we're skipping over that one. So a lot of those are like we said, morality games. Definitely not that one. So
We're going to buy it.
probably. Uh, the only one that I think we really play today is maybe Sultan and Chinese checkers.
And
You buy any board game kit, there's going to be Chinese checkers on it.
true, true. I don't know about Kriegspiel. It might still be around. It's German, so
Well, you said it's a chess variant, correct?
yeah. But the exact variant, I'm not sure if it's still around because chess is still played everywhere. But Spiel, I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I think board games are going to be an interesting subject. We might play some of them on Tabletop Simulator one of these days. Probably for the if we have time in the next episode, that might be fun.
Oh, we'll have plenty of time,
Um,
I imagine.
yes, um, I I do think that board games are kind of niche at the moment and not super big. As we get closer to the 50s, they'll become more and more popular. I believe in the 20s we get Monopoly, the original version, which was supposed to be a moral game teaching kids about the dangers of monopolies,
Let's
which
go.
is really, really strange because I guess it's for policy, but
Standard
I don't think
Oil.
many kids are becoming billionaires in this period.
They're teaching us all about Standard Oil and why you should never end up like them. Even no rant. That trial was so rigged against Standard Oil. I cannot stress how dumb it was. That actually went through and they got broken apart. There was no way they should have actually lost. That each damn testimony was like some hick from the middle of nowhere just saying that, and it turns out they never actually like lived by anywhere near Standard Oil to begin with. I'm like, wow, they actually put a whole company based on nonsense. Literally
To be fair,
nonsense.
to be fair, court cases were not the most stringent at the time.
Yeah, but I'm like, this is the at the time largest company in the entire country, and it wrote apart because the president wanted the dub. That's literally it. He wanted a dub.
It's like they're coming out here batting for giant mega corporations.
Yeah, they'll spare me in the coming mega wars. You'll see. But
You've been playing too much Monopoly, my dude.
you're damn right. A game I do want to learn is shogi. It's pretty neat looking.
What's shogi?
It's the philosophy checkers.
Oh, oh, that looks old.
It is old, very old.
Oh, I can't. I can't read that. I can't read Japanese.
I
I
can't
can't read
either.
kanji.
Um, man, I'm kind of curious about this other game though. That Jolly game. Let's not talk about that one that very much though. But man, how
I
did he get away with that one? Oh wait, yeah, the timeline. Never mind.
yeah. I a lot of the what's playing department store. Let me look at that one a little bit more. If you couldn't tell, this is the one thing we didn't do a ton of research on.
Yeah,
It's probably because it's not super important. Um,
yeah.
I've never heard of the board game Leapfrog.
That's the one thing I will say is that we put more effort into movies because games just there's nothing really interesting at the time, and the one thing that's quote unquote interesting, not really, is because from a modern perspective, it's like wow, how do y'all get away with that? But then we actually know how they got away with it.
Yeah. Um, I don't. I don't think there's a lot going on in the 1890s in general. This is kind of the pilot. We're seeing what works, what doesn't, and as we get further on, eventually the plan for this series is I kind of want each category, especially once we get to the 70s and like video games are their own thing, comic books are their own thing, board games and tabletops are their own thing, right? We
Yeah,
can have an episode dedicated to each medium, especially music.
I did go back
Uh,
by 1 year in the 1880s. Monopolist, the board game.
oh, Monopoly. Okay.
I guess it's different. I'm not sure what's different between the two.
It might just be an earlier title, but either way, I did not know that it was older than that. I thought it was like a 20s thing, but cool. Monopoly's
The
been around for ages.
the game of logic, which I imagine was totally the hit of all the kids.
All the lame kids.
1840s, we got Aegon, which is a strategy game. Well, all of them are
Most
strategy
board
games.
games fall into that category.
Yeah, we don't have party games just yet. Uh, it's Hexagon sales, hexagonal sales.
Wait, you're
Then
telling me that, like, I don't know, Cards Against Humanity wasn't invented in the 40s?
oh man, I guess not. Oh wait,
That would have been wild.
1820s. We do have some interesting sounding ones here. Is Traveler's Tour through the United States. It's literally a
That
geography game.
sounds that sounds very Americana.
Very much so. 1800s. Bell and Hammer and the Mansion of Happiness. I'm gonna be happy at all by the end of this. I can already tell.
A brothel?
Uh, but there's no other recorded games from Wikipedia beyond the 1800s. Of course, we know that the games before that, but uh,
Chess.
between Bell and Hammer, or rather White Horse, depending on who you ask, we got Bell and Hammer or the Mansion of Happiness. Take your pick. Which one came first? I'm not sure which came first.
It is fascinating that people have been playing board games since the Bronze Age, though, if you look into that.
Mm-hmm. Um.
Uh, the Royal Game of as an example.
Ooh. So unlike the Bell and Hammer, we at least know that Mansion of Happiness actually has a recorded date that we do know release date. It got released around the 1800, and oh, wow, the game was actually played, well into 1926. So 126 or so years of
Not
usage.
bad for a board game in the modern period.
Yeah, I don't know why it fell out of the usage. I mean, okay, Oz. It's basically from what I can tell, it's a racing sort of game. It's around a 67 space track of sorts. So it's kind of like the game of life almost, almost.
Or the Game of which is also a racing game.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I don't know why this fell out of popularity. It sounds like it would last for a long time, really long
It
time.
does seem, it sounds really interesting, and perhaps one day we'll play it.
Ooh.
Is there any closing thoughts you have? Because I can't really think of anything super specific. The
So
1890s is an interesting period, but it's very shallow.
the 1890, like you said, it's very shallow. This is a neat period. It's showing the roots of what will become the great things in our lives. But beyond just the roots, I think it's nice to appreciate that it exists. That we can still see this. Otherwise, it's very sadly gone. Before then. But hey, there's not much to really say about it.
Yeah, I my thought, just to kind of close this out, is our lives are kind of dominated by media now. I know I've said it a kind of couple times using that word a lot, but we really are. Our world is, we are consumed by media. Every day, every person is looking at something. Whether you're scrolling through TikTok, watching a movie, playing a video game, we absorb our lives in media, and it is really, for me at least, it's very fulfilling to see where all of that started and to see an era where we weren't, right? I want you to imagine a time, Scyther, where you worked for 15 hours a day. Maybe because you had to, maybe is because when you went home, there was jack shit to do,
Yeah. Ugh.
right? Like, I remember when I was a teenager, me and my dad went to a cabin, right? And we had a rule: no electronics, right? We're just gonna be one with nature. And we realized very quickly why people worked so much,
Yeah.
right? Because even if you don't have to, it's like, oh my god, what am I doing? Nothing. And I think it is important to kind of think of an era of people where their media wasn't influenced by other media, right? These are people who are making films and music based off essentially nothing, right? These
Yeah.
guys are just making films based on, hey, that'd be fun, or here's a play, right? And I think that really makes that ground zero point, because now we have this reference. Everything that we cover from now on is going to be built upon this foundation that we have looked at today. And we're
Yeah.
going to see a lot of callbacks. And we already have talked about like the water or water. That gag gets used a lot even today. Um, we're going to see more and more and more that film does not exist in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
No medium exists in a vacuum. Every piece of media is a response to the last piece of media.
Very true.
And I think doing this year by year will really help illustrate that.
Which is where I do want to briefly talk about what are we doing next time. Because next time we will, I imagine, be going through films in the 1900s. Or 1910s, I guess.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
1900s.
Yeah. It sounds weird to say the 1900s because that implies that we're going to be talking about 100 years of film, which we are not. Uh,
The first 10 years.
we Yes, we're going to be talking from 1900 to 1909. And this is where we start to see film come into its own. It's when we start to see jazz kind of start existing. And it's an era where we see the first filmmakers, superstar filmmakers arise. We're going to be talking a lot about D.W. Griffith, Lillian Gish. I don't know if she appears yet, but I know Griffith does. We're going to see Millier fall into obscurity, very unfortunately. That's something I can talk about really fast before we close out.
Yeah.
Mr. Millier. Very interesting story about the man. He was a magician, which explains his, you know, being a filmmaker and doing special effects. He thought film was the next transition point
Mm-hmm.
for magicians, which, he wasn't wrong. And he made several films. Edison literally stole them, not like ripped them off. He literally stole the reels and smuggled them into America.
Jeez.
Edison was a dick. Uh,
Historically so.
and and he started showing his films to an American audience. And eventually, there was a copyright dispute. Millier burnt all what he thought were all of the copies of his films, threw a huge tantrum, and ended up becoming a guy who sold teddy bears at a train station
Jeez.
for many years. Eventually, though, as people started discovering the history of film, as people could start looking back, he was rediscovered. And I don't remember what period it was. I think it was the 30s or the 40s. There's this really heartwarming story where they showed he was in the theater. They showed his film to a bunch of people who had never seen it, and they were in awe even then to see a film this old and see how impressive they were. And he would say later on that was the most fulfilling moment of his life.
So what we can say about this is fuck Edison. That's what we can say.
Yeah, no, yeah, fuck Edison, fuck that guy. Um, he made some okay movies, but god damn, the way he got there. Though I suppose if Edison didn't steal and then patent films, yes, he stole a film and then patented the technology because Edison. Um, we wouldn't have film in America, and we're gonna talk about the early days of Hollywood and why Hollywood's in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The reasons are comedic.
It's always but it's funny to me that we see a lot of these figures. There's dicks. There's horrible people, and they deserve. Excuse me, or rather, they deserved the worst, and I hope they all got the worst in the end. But that's just me.
I think, at least in the case of film, Edison did kind of get the. I think Millier at the end of the day won. when it comes to the history, and I think that is kind of heartwarming because yes, he did get his work stolen, and yes, he did have troubles with his films. But at the end of the day, when you look at this period and you look at people talking about the 1890s, they don't talk about Edison. No one gives a fuck about Edison, right? He
Just
didn't
good.
do anything. We watched all these Edison films. He did a couple interesting things, like the Dixon experimental sound film. Everyone talks about Millier because Millier is the true innovator here.
Uh,
Millier is the person who is not just experimenting like Edison was. Millier is innovating. He is changing the way the film works. And we're going to see a lot of that very soon.
which is going to be very exciting. But from what I can tell here, our bracket is clear. We got everything we want to talk about. I think this is a good
Yes.
place to end this. This has been a very fun, very enlightening, Jesus, uh, first episode. I'm looking forward to the next one actually.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to next week. We're going to be talking about the early 1900s, and I hope anyone who watched to the end, I really do appreciate. We really appreciate it. If you want to do all the engagement stuff, that's just a bonus. Really, we appreciate you sitting through this with us,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll see you next time.
Yep. See you guys.